Hi guys, I wanted to answer a question about long and low. And first off, where I would use long and low, and second off, how do you achieve long and low without your horse falling onto the forehand, and what do those variations look like? And I think long and low is sort of a broad term that people end up using for trying, I think like in their heads, they're trying to get their horse's head out of the air to make a nice banana shape so horse can power forward. And then you get so many different schools of thoughts. And people start thinking that Western riding is all about long and low, which it's not. People are very, very confused about that. So I'm not going to tell you all the things that it's not because I think that could take forever. Let me explain to you why I choose to use the long and low concept and what it's for. I will ride my horse long and low and make a point of putting it into my program every single ride for specific horses. Bella sometimes gets a little stiff through her poll, though you can actually see Bella has a really lovely, appropriately muscled neck. She does get to be stiff through her poll from a head nodding issue, and long and low sort of helps her stretch. My younger horses, as I'm bringing them up to being able to carry a soft feel and ride with a little bit more contact, I like them to start out long and low so that way they can stretch over their backs. Horses that have been jammed up by people inappropriately pulling on their reins often need to learn to work long and low before they can work in a frame that of any degree of soft feel, because their bodies have been jammed up and their response to reins has become so inappropriate. And I think that's where the question of, if my horse is long and low, does that mean my horse is on the forehand? And absolutely, it couldn't be further through the truth. So the ingredients I need to have my horse long and low and not stretching out of my hands onto the forehand, because those are two very different things. And I think that those two things get confused a lot. And then you have people who aren't used to seeing horses work with their head below their top line, and so they automatically think that if the horse's head is below the top line, that the horse is on the forehand, and that may not be the case. What you actually need to look at is how much control you have over your horse's shoulders, how much you can get them to engage in a free gait, beginning on a loose rein from the hindquarters. And if you can get all of the basics that we teach you in our program, the 4 core movements, going pretty well, you shouldn't be far off from being able to work long and low if it's appropriate for your horse. Again, your horse has been mentally, emotionally, or physically jammed up by either inappropriate riding, training, or husbandry issues like being kept in a stable for a long period of time. And again, that list can go on and on and on, why we need to have our horse be able to stretch over the back to make them soft. The ingredients that I need to have first is I need to be able to disengage my hindquarters. So that way, my next step of a disengagement is asking my horse to travel forward and be engaged. If I can't get a disengagement, I'm probably not going to get engagement when I travel forward. I need to have a fair amount of soft feel when I ask my horse to back up. So the reason why I need this is I need my horse learning to have an appropriate response to pull pressure. This is where horses get screwed up, and I think riders get screwed up because so many horses have learned to fight against pressure at the pole. If my horse can't have an appropriate response to pressure at the pole here, or it's really difficult, trying to get them to travel and carry me while they're traveling long and low. I won't say it's impossible, but it's a ton of work, and chances are you end up breaking more in your relationship than you are fixing. So what I mean by do I have a little bit of soft feel going is when I pick up my reins, does my horse break over at the pole, and does she soften her face and give to the reins? If that can't happen here, when I go to ask her for it when I'm traveling forward, what is going to happen is she is going to fall on the forehand. Now the other part of getting your horse off the forehand is being able to have control over your horse's shoulders. So if I can't take my horse's shoulders and put them over here or put them back over here, chances are my horse is very heavy on the forehand already. And doing things like rollovers, lots of rollovers and lots of transitions and lots of disengagements will be your first port of call, not trying to ride your horse forward long and low. Though I think it seems to be a go-to answer for a lot of trainers. I think that we can offer you more than that by teaching you to do rollovers and hindquarter disengagement. But I'm going to proceed with my long and low idea here. So I'm going to get Bella moving forward here. So I've got my backup with a soft feel. I've got my hindquarter disengagement, meaning I could take a step out of that and become engaged. And I've got control over where my horse's shoulders go. In particular, if you're going to work on long and low without a bit, you need to have some lateral motion in there, or long and low is just going to teach your horse to bust through your hands and pull away from you and dive onto their forehand, or root off and not be stoppable. So we want to make sure that these are things that we're addressing in a sequence. And if you guys want to understand that sequence a little bit better, I have a book, Young Horse Development, that might give you a lot of the psychology that you need to have in place and understood before you start working on long and low. But anyways, we're going to get moving on. Okay, so I'm going to ride a circle here just so you guys can see me close up. I want Bella to be able to work on a casual rein first. If I am still working on my horse having a case of the zoomies and rocketing off, I don't care where her head is, it's probably not with me. So Bella, I can stop with my seat. She feels a transition. I can get a little soft feel with my backup. I can move my hindquarters. I can take my shoulders over here. I can travel forward on this circle, and I don't have to do too much steering. This is now an appropriate time to think about long and low. If you don't have those things in place, long and low is only going to teach your horse to pull out of your hands. And yes, if your horse is pulling out of your hands when you're working on long and low, your horse is definitely heavy on the forehand. Okay, so what I'm trying to achieve before I start asking Bella to stretch long and low, so the stretching long and low is to actually stretch over her back, engage her hindquarters more, and get her top line loosened up. People think that the top line has to be hard. For our horses to be able to feel our slightest cue, slightest change, they actually need to be soft. Their muscles from pole to hock actually need to be really soft as they're pushing us up from the ground. So if those things aren't happening, long and low might be a way to achieve that, but rollovers are still going to be your first port of call before you start trying to do long and low. Okay, so Bella's moving here. You can see she's got some nice free movement. She's listening to me. We've been on the circle long enough. You can see her ear pointing in at the camera, listening to me. And she's going, okay, what would you like me to do differently, or should I stay the same? Now I'm going to say, what if we get a little bit of a soft feel? Okay, did you see that break of the pull? Go back and watch the video again if you need to. There was just a slight break of the pull. Her face became vertical. She softened to my hands. And so she took one stride with a soft feel and stretched her nose down to the ground. That is the first step to becoming long and low. Now, the reason why I'm going to approach it the way I would ask for a soft feel is so that way my horse understands that when I pick up my reins are to guide the feet and to create a posture. My reins are not necessarily meant to affect the face, to create a vertical face. Now, as we get going here, I need my horse to be quite forward. I'm going to ask my horse to stretch long and low. There, did you see her nose go down there? I'll do it again. Now that is not necessarily what I'm looking for. See how she's pushing her nose to the ground? That's fine. I'm going to hold my reins until she softens her pull, and then I'm going to give back. And it's really something that is done from a feeling. I need the same feel that you get when you get a one-rein stop. is the feel that you're going to have when you're asking your horse for a soft feel to carry a long and low posture. When we do it that way, we actually pick the horse's shoulders up. So when I pick up my reins here, my horse gets taller in the shoulder. If I'm still having arguments about gait and direction and flexion, my horse is only going to get heavy trying to do long and low. Because Bella is not fighting me, because she is doing all of the forearm movements lightly and effectively, it's causing her shoulder to come up, and when the shoulder comes up, the hindquarters step in. And when the hindquarters step in, she can stretch over her back, and then it's just a matter of where she feels she needs to put her head to actually stretch over her back. So we've talked about long and low, but we've actually been talking more about soft feel. So I think when you're talking about, when someone gives you the prescription for doing long and low, or says don't do it because your horse is heavy on the forehand, there are a lot of reasons for you not to do it. And one of them being is if you don't have all of the ingredients in place, your horse is going to get heavy on the forehand. If you're doing it appropriately, your horse is going to flex at the poll, stretch her nose down to the ground, soften the muscles over their back, and that's actually what we're trying to achieve. Working your horse long and low and trying to force them into a long and low frame likely will cause your horse to get heavy on the forehand. Remember, we're doing it as a stretching exercise. If your horse has been jammed up mentally, emotionally, or physically, that is a reason to do long and low. My first thing I would do would be rollovers. If it is appropriate for your horse to do long and low, make sure you're not overdoing it and you're moving on to working on a soft feel right away.
Okay, Jamie, just when you were walking around before you even picked up contact, Bella was stretching out her neck and engaging the hindquarters. Wouldn't that do the same thing and supple the horse? If you're on a circle, they're on a completely loose rein, would that not be achieving the same thing? Okay. So.
And why that is achieving the same thing is because all of the other ingredients are in there.
Yes.
You know, we have mental, emotional, physical symbiosis with our horse, and that is a demonstration that she is emotionally connected to whatever our activity is. And so through making sure that everything else in our relationship is good, she wants to travel forward, which means she's not heavy on the forehand, which means she's actually powering through her body quite well. Some horses who have sort of been stuck and jammed up for a long time might in fact need a lot of help with the reins. And that I think is a completely different video that we will do someday very soon. But for now, I actually think how we achieve that with a horse who's very heavy on the forehand already and just doesn't want to stretch down, again, my answer is still going to be the four core movements, and we'll address that at another time.
Okay, and then one more thing, if you don't mind getting back on that circle in our film, if you could just, while you're going around, if the position of the head, in other words, in relation to the wither, is not how we judge heavy on the forehand, do you want to explain to that while you walk around us quickly?
Yes. Okay, so, and I think it probably comes from fairly contemporary dressage judging and showing. People think that the horse's head is below the top line, therefore they must be heavy on the forehand. And what you see, what you're going to see is that if I have control over my horse's shoulders, she couldn't possibly be heavy on the forehand, and that's how you, as riders, you're going to know the difference. I'm going to ride, I'm going to tell you if Bella falls on the forehand, and I'm going to let you be the judges yourself by looking at the posture. Gareth, chime in and tell me what you see and let everybody sort of hear what your thoughts are. I don't even know that I can cause Bella to go heavy on the forehand right now, but I can tell you the things that I look for when I watch you guys ride. And one of them is if I have to argue with my horse's turns, they're heavy on the forehand. Now you see, when I asked her to turn, her nose didn't tip in a funny direction, her head didn't come in the air, her body didn't get jammed up. That's how I know she's not heavy on the forehand. Can you see how active her shoulder is? A horse who is heavy on the forehand working low, you will not see that much activity in their shoulder because they kind of have the shoulder hid underneath their body because they really don't want to go forward. And horses who are heavy on the forehand are more likely to buck. So again, those are, if you're trying to fix a bucking issue or I don't want to go forward issue, rollovers are going to be your first thing. Long and low is not an appropriate tool yet.
And when you see how deep Bella steps, that's her hindquarters reaching all the way to your feet.
Yeah, you can see Bella's hind feet. When she is mentally and emotionally collected, her hind feet come right up underneath my seat. That's how engaged she is. And so for her to stay balanced, to do that, her head has to go below her top line. If you really look at some of the world's best dressage horses and riders, when you see them at a canter, you actually see the horse's head looks like it's up in the air, but what it is the hindquarters are engaged so much that the head, the whole front end of the horse, has to come up to accommodate the deep step of the hindquarters being engaged. And so people see the horse's head up here and they think, well, that's where it should be. And I think that's where people get very confused about horses being heavy on the forehand. Head below the top line is wrong. If you go back to the earliest texts that we have about any sort of horsemanship, it is not going to tell you that a horse's head being up here is a good thing. And it will never tell you that your horse can't be heavy on the forehand.
Yeah.
From that
Yeah,
position.
yeah, the head position's got nothing to do with the weight in the forehand. If those legs are deep under the horse is not heavy on the forehand because they're lifting with their hindquarters, so you can move their shoulder quite easily. Even if your steering is iffy and the horse is stepping deep, you're probably still on your hindquarters,
Yes.
but you've got a cue mix-up or you've got a horse that's bracing.
Exactly, and if we have a horse that's bracing, trying to ride them forward and then pull them back with the reins because that's what the horse feels, is probably only going to end up causing our horse to sort of tip over their nose and the hind end comes up pretty quickly. The reasons I will use long and low again is to get my horse to stretch, to get my horses not to be jammed up mentally, emotionally, or physically, and as a quick warm-up for me to start working on soft feel and finesse type riding. Other than that, I would never spend hour after hour after hour with my horses trying to work on long and low because I could cause them to become heavy on the forehand with the drive pull method. And I know it's actually a really commonly taught method, but I think that the function of it has been misunderstood. Okay, thanks guys. I hope you found this helpful. It's a really big discussion. If you guys have any more questions about it, let me know. I will try and post an article with this video or in the next day or two that has some pictures of Bella's son Cherokee, who is actually cantering and is actually really quite high on the shoulder. And we were having the discussion about making this video, and what you're going to see is a horse who has never been jammed up mentally, emotionally, and physically, who gets really quite tall on the shoulder and is engaged, and long and low would never be appropriate for him because there's nothing remedial to fix. Hope you guys have a good day. Thank you.